Coming up, Blue Origin and United Launch Alliance team up.
Spaceship Earth Grants wants to send you to space.
And SpaceX is building a new launch site in Brownsville, Texas.
Plus, we're going to talk about CCT cap and what that acronym means. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. Got the flag up now. You can see the Sergeant
Private space station.
And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 7.29 for Saturday, September 20th, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is my beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented wife, Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be your hosts for this episode. Before we get started this week, which has a boatload of announcements, by the way, I want to give a huge thank you to the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this episode happen. These are the people who have contributed at least $10 to this specific episode. We are a crowd-funded show, and every single dollar helps. You don't have to contribute $10. You can do $1. You can do 50 cents, whatever you think is fair for this episode. You can find out more information on how to crowdfund this show over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First up, we've got Blue Origin and United Launch Alliance, like out of the blue, pun intended. Yeah, you like that. Announced a partnership. They are announcing the BE-4 engine. This was an announcement that happened on September 17th, 2014. It was to the press at the press corps, and they've got the BE-3 engine, and that's what you guys may have kind of seen. We've featured that before. It's a liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen engine that they've been developing.
Right.
The BE-4 engine is actually a liquid natural gas liquid oxygen engine. So a little bit different than BE-3. And the purpose of the BE-4 and the reason they announced with United Launch Alliance is that they're going to be dropping this on the bottom of the Atlas V rocket. Now, as you may or may not remember, the Atlas V, they've been having a little bit of political issue with the RD-180 engines that are acquired through Russia. Now, the reason they use those particular engines is they are scary good. The RD-180 engine has a thrust at sea level of about 860,000 pounds. That's not small. To put this into comparison, the new BE-4 engine, this is an all-U.S. designed, manufactured, built, tested, all of it in the U.S. That engine is going to have a thrust at sea level of 550,000 pounds. And you might go, oh, well, that number's not big enough. It's not going to work. Until, of course, you put two of them on an Atlas V, at which point you get about 1.1 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to integrate into the Atlas V in about 4 years. That's the guesstimate. They say that... So Blue Origin is Jeff Bezos' company. He's also the founder of Amazon. They've been doing a bunch of stuff. They've had abort tests for vehicles. They were part of NASA's commercial cargo stuff, commercial crew stuff. They've been doing a bunch of weird stuff that you just don't hear a lot out of Blue Origin. So this really, truly was just kind of out of left field. And all of a sudden, oh, Blue Origin's going to help United Launch Alliance with their engine problem. The other thing that was a little out of left field is normally you'd expect United Launch Alliance to go to Rocketdyne, which is where they normally get their engines for, like the Delta IV. But no, they're going with Blue Origin, partly because there's already apparently 3 years of development that's gone into these engines. So it'll be a total of approximately 7 years to get it from engine to fully integrated on an Atlas V. Now, the Atlas V is a RP-1 liquid oxygen vehicle, so there's going to be a little bit of tweaking and modification that has to happen to the Atlas V in order to support a liquid natural gas liquid oxygen system, and then they're going to have to move from one engine to two engines, and a few tweaks are going to happen, and that's part of why this is going to take 4 additional years as opposed to just dropping a new engine on the vehicle. It's not a drop-in replacement for the RD-180, but it is kind of cool news. It is another new engine coming out of the United States, and then that combined with the CCT cap announcements that we're going to talk about in our main topic, there are a bunch of amazing things happening in space this week. It was really cool. So, yeah, there we go.
Very cool. So there is a global crowdfunding spaceflight contest going on that you might have seen on Twitter particularly. It comes from the Spaceship Earth Grants, I want to say foundation, but it's the Spaceship Earth Grants group, which is actually based here in San Diego, or in California, San Diego, which is very, very cool. And they're running a contest to send somebody into low Earth orbit, kind of on a Virgin Galactic or X-Core or something of the like. I think the exact quote is, "of the providers that are available at time of award."
Which right now is 0.
It is
well,
at
that's
the
not
moment.
entirely true. Soyuz.
Sure. I mean, I guess there's that. So this is a very, very cool thing, and it's extremely simple to do. You just have to be 18 or older. You have to submit a short written summary and a 90-second video. And the summary and the video are talking about how you're going to use that flight to better yourself, your community, your country, and or our entire planet. Which is a very, very cool thing. So it involves anybody and everybody. I thought that was neat. You have to have your submission in, or you have to have a basic account set up in December 2014. And then basic voting starts in early of January 2015. It goes from January 5th to February 28th. Then out of that, the 1,000 finalists will be confirmed, and then by March 20th. And then out of that, the winners will be announced on, drumroll, ready? Can you guess? Can you guess what date? April 12th.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's great. I mean,
which is important because
because in 1961, April 12th, Yuri Gagarin was the very first human to reach space, and then out of that, a number of different things happened. There's a Yuri's Night, there's a Yuri's Day, all of these sorts of things. So it's a very historic day.
A Yuri's Week, a Yuri's Month,
a Yuri's Year. Why not? We'll go for that. So that's really exciting, and it's coming up fairly quickly. So you'll see, the best part about this is that because it is for the betterment of not just yourself, but your community, your country, so on and so forth, that it's getting a lot of people really excited, and not just the space geeks, but anybody and everybody.
Cool. All right, so we've spoken about the Atlas V engines being switched out. Well, actually, there was an Atlas V launch that happened not that long ago. This was September 16th, 2014 at 21:44 Universal Time. Here's the coverage.
5, 4, 3. We have Atlas ignition. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. We have liftoff of the Atlas V rocket carrying the CLIO spacecraft for Lockheed Martin Space Systems.
Night launches are absolutely gorgeous. I love them. The only problem is, so you have to see night launches in person to really appreciate them. Cameras cannot pick up the extremely huge variation between the darkness of night and the scary brightness of the engines. But there you go. That was an Atlas V 401 configuration. Those three numbers mean the 4, that is a 4-meter fairing up top. The 0 means that there are 0 solid rocket boosters that lift it, and the 1 indicates that there is 1 upper stage engine. This carried that was Minnesota. It carried the secretive payload of CLIO for the National Reconnaissance Office. I don't even know what.
Oh yeah, good job, Terry.
So there you go. There was that launch. Now we were supposed to have a launch of CRS-4 this last weekend, and we are doing a new thing. We're bringing on Space Mike from Epic Future Space, who is our new SpaceX correspondent. Space Mike, tell us a little bit about what SpaceX is doing.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me on tomorrow. So, as most of you guys know, SpaceX has been planning on launching the CRS-4 to the International Space Station. They hopefully would have launched yesterday, but that mission was scrubbed due to weather. However, their next launch attempt will be Saturday or Sunday, depending on where you are, at 5:52 Universal Standard Time. And where I am, that's going to be about 10:52 tonight. So looking forward to that and hoping that the mission goes off successfully. And this mission is kind of cool because of the payloads that they have on board. The first thing that they have is they're going to have a what's called the ISS Rapid Scat, which will be weather predictions and stuff like that. They're also going to have a Cyclops, which is an acronym for a new small-sat CubeSat launcher that they're going to have. So just one more way for CubeSats to be launched from the ISS. They're also going to have a bone densitometer. I didn't even say that right, but they're going to have a bone density measurement device to be able to experiment with rats, and then eventually for the humans as well to measure their bone density loss while in microgravity. And then something that is really cool is they're going to have a 3D printer experiment that is being carried by the Dragon. And this is the first time that they're going to have a zero-G 3D printer experiment on the ISS. So that's really, really cool. Something else is they're also going to be carrying two small sats that are going to be launched from the ISS. The first one is the Arcad 3, which is another one of their test beds for planetary resources to test out the hardware for their future Arcad 100 spacecraft. And then also there is going to be what's called the SpinSat from the Naval Research Lab, which is going to be testing, or rather measuring atmospheric density. But something else that's really cool is this SpinSat is going to have the first electrode solid propulsion thrusters. And if these things are successful, if the amount of thrust that they're hoping for out of these small electric solid propulsion thrusters would enable small sats and CubeSats to perform orbital maneuvers that they were previously unable to do. So, of course, it's just a test, but if that works, then that's really cool. So this isn't just another cargo mission that SpaceX is sending to the ISS, because there's a lot of really cool things that are on board. And then SpaceX has also announced that they are going to be beginning construction on their new Texas launch site in Boca Chica Beach near Brownsville, Texas. And they're going to start the groundbreaking on Monday, and of course it's going to be a huge media event for it. And it's really exciting that they're going to be doing that. They have projected that they're going to be finished with construction in 2016 and begin launches then. And from this site, SpaceX has at least publicly said that they are going to be launching commercial satellites from this launch pad. And they will continue to launch rockets from Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg Air Force Base as well. But this hopefully will allow them to accomplish a lot of the commercial satellites that they have on their books rather quickly, and be able to speed up their amount of launches that they have each year. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm sure all of us will be following closely when they will finally be able to launch from there.
Absolutely. And then I cut him off because of lag, and that is how I roll. It's all right. We're going to bring Space Mike back in to talk about CCT cap in the next segment, because there's a lot of news that came out, and no acronym policy, so that is the Commercial Crew Transportation Capability Contract, CCT cap. All right, before we get into break, the European Space Agency has revealed a site for the Rosetta lander of Philae. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. I know I suck at pronunciation. So
the Philae landing site, where we all expect to have steak.
How do you pronounce it? How do you pronounce it?
I honestly don't know.
You know what? All right, the steak landing site, that 67P that you see right there, and that little zoomed in area, that is landing site J. I'm air quoting, you can't see it, but landing site J, there you go, that they determined that is the landing site that they want to go to. There's the steak, Philae, is I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's fun now, is a little lander that's going to detach from Rosetta, which is already at the asteroid. It arrived, comet. It arrived August 6th, and it's already within 30 kilometers, or about 18 miles. And it's going to land, that lander is going to land on November 10th. The thing is, with the almost no gravity of the comet, it's going to weigh like they will essentially weigh 1 gram. Right. And so they have to do special things to get it to actually land correctly. They're going to deploy 3 landing lights with shock absorbers, cool, but then they're going to have a let's see here. There's a harpoon that's going to go into the comet. Themselves? Yeah, to make sure that it doesn't bounce back off. And it's going to come in and it's going to screw itself into the comet. Isn't that awesome? It's like, no, seriously, we're staying here. All right, so that's going to happen. It's a 2-day mission. It could last a lot longer if they can get the solar panels, the photovoltaics, to get more energy from the sun. So minimum of 2 days, hopefully longer, but it's really only set for 2 days. And like I said, late this year. And then when that happens, Rosetta has to stay above the lander so that there's communication. So the lander communicates to Rosetta, which communicates back to Earth. Gotcha. It's going to take photos, do science, general science. It's going to have drilling and measurements and so forth and so on. So that's going to be happening later this year. Landing site approved by ESA. All right.
Nice.
Take us into break. What's the last story?
Really very, very quickly. There was a KLM Open at the Kennemer Golf and Country Club in Amsterdam on September 14th, and Andy Sullivan, professional golfer, sunk a hole-in-one on hole 15, and consequently, I know who would care, got a trip on X Score, which is very flippin' cool.
No, here it is. Check it out.
Stel je voor, zou die erin gaan, dan zit je in een raket. Ja!
I could do that. I could do that.
Oh, that's so awesome. He actually hadn't been playing great the entire game necessarily, but he won the flight. Ultimately, he ended up third in the entire tournament. He said his caddy was as excited as he was because his immediate reaction was, "We're going to space!" He said himself he's not really great with heights, and so he's not really sure if he's going to go.
I didn't know that.
That he might have to check with the missus.
We'll take the ticket. We'll take the ticket.
Right?
Only problem is I think there's only one seat on like an X.
Yeah, this is a seat. Yeah.
So
so
we're gonna have to duke it out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. We're gonna go to break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk again with Space Mike from Epic Future Space about CCT Cap. Now, this particular break is not the calendar like normal, but actually the advertisement for that story earlier about the contest. So check.
Very cool.
Watch the break. Here you go. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Before we get into our main topic today, which is the Commercial Crew Transportation Capabilities Contract.
Very nice.
Oh my goodness, say that 3 times fast. Or CCT Cap, as we're going to refer to it from now on. I did want to give a shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have made this episode happen. These are the people who have contributed at least $5 to this specific episode. These are the producers. They're going to get a copy of After Dark when the show is complete, available early. They're also going to get their names in the show, and they have access to special, awesome Google Hangouts with Carrie-Ann and myself. So there are rewards to being a patron of Tomorrow and helping crowdfund this particular show. So more information on that over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's bring back Space Mike, or as I'm going to call him from now on, Epic Future Space Mike. Combine the two, and we had the Commercial Crew Transport Capabilities Contract. It was worth $6.8 billion. What this contract is it's a continuation of what NASA is already funding with something called CCI Cap, which is the integration contract, and it's basically so that we no longer have to pay Russia to send United States astronauts to the International Space Station. We're paying these private companies to help develop these spacecraft. There were 3 runners. There was, there were more than that, but it was whittled down essentially to 3. We had Boeing with their CST-100. We had SpaceX with their Dragon V2. And then we had Sierra Nevada with their Dream Chaser.
Yes.
The 2 that were chosen were Boeing. So I'm going to take Boeing first. Here's some...
the 2 that were chosen were Boeing and SpaceX.
Yes. Thank you. That helps. So let's start with Boeing first. They won, of the $6.8 billion contract, they won $4.2 billion of that. Here's kind of what that's going to look like. This is the CST-100 spaceship. And this is from their stuff. It's a state-of-the-art capsule. It's a weldless fabrication design. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah. Using flight-proven navigation software. So you can look at that one of 2 ways. Right. Either it has legacy and we know it works, or the other way you can look at it as it's old. It's a powerful pusher escape system to propel the rocket away from a malfunctioning booster. All of these designs are better than the shuttle, a side-mounted design. So all of these boosters sit on top of the vehicle. So all the problems you had with like foam liberation on the external tank and all the issues with like the solid boosters, any issue we had with shuttle would not have been a problem if it was a top-mounted design like the CST-100 or even Dragon V2. Right. This particular vehicle can carry up to 7 astronauts, although the contract only states that you need to carry 4. Right. And it's going to launch atop an Atlas V. Now, the launches are supposed to start around 2017, which is before that new BE4 engine from Blue Origin will be out, so we'll be launching atop an Atlas V with the RD-180 engines. And that is what Boeing got for their $4.2 billion. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's a minimum of 2 flights for that $4.2 billion, and up to 6.
Yes.
And that's true of the other guys as well. So, Space Mike, tell me a little bit about what SpaceX is doing with CCT-CAP.
Well, out of that $6.8 billion, of course, you mentioned that Boeing is getting 4.2 of that, and SpaceX is getting 2.6 of that. Now, it's important to mention that the CCI cap is not yet over, and part of that is SpaceX doing their launch abort test, their pad abort test, as well as an in-flight abort test. So that will make lots of progress. However, there isn't a whole lot of publicly available information as to what the milestones will be for both Boeing and SpaceX, and what the rewards would be for accomplishing those milestones. And I really hope that they do release those like they have in the past with CCDev and CCICAP. But as you mentioned, they are also going to be able to transport 7 astronauts with their Dragon V2 capsule, and the minimum of 2 flights with a maximum of 4. And this whole round will enable them, or NASA I mean, to select Boeing and SpaceX for future flights, similar to like what the COTS program did, transitioning over to the CRS program, where they actually had planned out and scheduled flights instead of just the test flights. So there's a lot of really cool stuff with the Dragon V2, and I really love that they're going to have continue to have their trunk section, although it's not going to be as much. And a lot of people have been thinking or saying that SpaceX kind of got the raw end of this deal, with Boeing getting the most amount of money. However, it's important to note that SpaceX has been working on their Dragon capsule since 2006, when they got awarded the COTS program. And Boeing didn't even start work on their CST-100 capsule until 2011. And even though they would need more money in order to get to the same goal that NASA has set for them as SpaceX, it's important to note that the Commercial Crew Program Manager, Kathy, I think you pronounce her last name Louders.
Oh, we don't do pronunciations on this show at all. You're free to butcher it as much as you want.
Oh, good. Then I'm going to call her Looters. Kathy Looters has said that Boeing and SpaceX got exactly what they asked for. So this is not a game of favoritism.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, speaking of it not being a game of favoritism, there was that third provider, Sierra Nevada, with their Dream Chaser. And, secretly, I was kind of rooting for those guys. They had a miniature space shuttle.
Yeah.
It was kind of awesome, actually. And it was pretty far along in development. It's not like it was this drawing on paper. They actually had some flying hardware, and they were doing drop tests and landing tests with it. Nothing that had gone into space, certainly, but it was a cool looking little vehicle. And for those of us who grew up with the space shuttle, and here's some video of it, actually also launches atop an Atlas V. It's much, much smaller than the space shuttle was, but it doesn't have the cargo section that the old space shuttle did. It's just sending up 7 astronauts. So it launches on top of the Atlas V, and again, just like the other 2 capsules, because it's on top of the rocket instead of being on the side of the rocket, this is actually substantially safer. You have a lot more abort scenarios that work with that. So, all right, cool, we launch into space, and then you go up to the space station on this space airplane. You dock, you do what you need to do on the space station, you come back down and you land like a regular airplane, and then you reuse it over and over and over again. And part of what will help reduce the cost of space is that reusability of the spacecraft, and being able to not just reuse them, but rapidly reuse them. Because the space shuttle, I'm going to air quote and say it was reusable. It was more refurbishable than reusable. Yeah, right? I mean, you couldn't actually reuse it. You had to take the engines apart, and you had to basically rebuild it every single mission, so it costs billions of dollars. What you really want is a reusable airplane in space that's just like a regular airplane. Look at how badass that is. I know we're a G show, but man, that is just freaking awesome. I am a little bit sad that NASA had to down select and remove Sierra Nevada. Now, my hope is this is not the end for this spacecraft. just because the U.S. didn't pick it doesn't mean that, say, ESA couldn't use it or JAXA couldn't use it or someone else couldn't use it. It's so far along in the development process, I'm hoping they actually can make it commercially available and launching on top of whatever rocket they want.
Right.
Designed to launch on top of an Atlas V, why not a Falcon 9? Why not a Delta IV?
Right.
Why not an H-2A, although I haven't actually looked at the lift capabilities of that rocket, so maybe not. But all three of those rockets will work at least.
And also, don't forget that Sierra Nevada, correct me if I'm wrong, has been talking to the German Space Agency as well as the Japanese Space Agency to market their Dream Chaser to them as well.
I think this would actually be a great case for the new space industry. If Sierra Nevada can lose out on CCT-CAP, but still actually make it to market with this vehicle using commercial customers like, as you say, whomever, right? It doesn't matter. That goes to prove that we no longer actually need the NASA funding to get these new space companies to all the way to fruition. I think that will actually be potentially a good thing, although at the same time a hardship on Sierra Nevada because you need money to make this stuff. It's not like it magically works without money.
Yeah, no, it's very, very cool. Somebody in the chat room mentioned it also has a very low G re-entry.
Oh yeah, that's important. When you're at space for a long time, your bone mass starts to decrease, your muscles start to
atrophy.
Thank you. I'm like, words. And having a high G reentry like the Soyuz, which I believe is 3.5 G, the chat room or someone can correct me.
Something like that.
That sucks, man.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think I was spitballing and without having any sort of information. This is honestly just my Carrie-Ann's own, haven't even discussed this with Ben, opinion. It does sort of sound as though NASA went with the two more experienced of the three companies, if you're going to look at it that way. You've got... while Boeing, their CST-100 doesn't have a whole lot of experience in and of itself, Boeing in general does. Kind of like you said, Sierra Nevada's not flying Dream Chaser yet, but SpaceX has flown Dragon or variation of Dragon, some sort of Dragon. They've got rockets that do go in the air, that kind of thing, right? So when you're looking at it from that sort of perspective, it's possible. I'm sure there were a million other details that helped them make their decision one way or the other. But just sort of off the cuff, that's sort of how it feels, which is not a completely unreasonable thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I think so too, and Boeing has been a part of every single, at least American, human spaceflight program from Mercury to Shuttle. So they've been part of it since the very beginning. So I think that did weigh heavily on the decision to select Boeing. And then SpaceX, of course, just because they're further along. Yes, everyone wants to have a shuttle again with Sierra Nevada, but it's a matter of experience and progress.
But the shuttle's so cool! You actually bring up a very valid point, which is this is about getting humans to the International Space Station as fast as possible. Yeah. This is not about developing new thruster technology. This is not about reinventing the space shuttle. This is about how quickly can we get U.S. astronauts onto a U.S. vehicle to go to the International Space Station. I'm going to say the U.S. Space Station, but that's not true. So, and I think it's good that we have multiple companies bidding right now, right? So we've got Boeing and SpaceX. Hopefully Sierra Nevada will continue to build it, but, right now with NASA, knowing Boeing and SpaceX, there is talk that they'll have to down select again. So that NASA will need to choose only one provider to get up to the International Space Station. Now, that isn't actually set in stone, and actually none of this is set in stone. We don't actually know what Congress is going to allocate to NASA for this. It is assumed that a continuing resolution will allow them the funds to continue to do this program as was set forth before.
Yeah.
But that assumption may be wrong. So they have been, the commercial programs have been undercut by Congress traditionally, like not being given as much money as NASA has asked for. So we'll see how it actually looks when they're actually given their check, so to speak,
yeah,
from
I think
Congress.
Even Lori Garver tweeted something out along those lines, talking about where's this money coming from over the next 3 years?
Yeah, kind of. Oh, actually, that's a valid point. This isn't all at once.
There are a 3-year program.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Space Mike mentioned, you have to hit milestones. And like CCI CAP, the program before CCT CAP, the providers chose their own milestones, and then those milestones were published. I don't believe that these milestones have been published just yet, so I don't know if we know what different areas they're going to have to hit. But I am excited to see what SpaceX does to complete out their CCI CAP stuff. That's going to be some freaking awesome stuff coming out of there. At the
oh yeah,
what is it, end of this year or something like that?
Should be, if everyone is able to do it. I don't know if they. I know that SpaceX will definitely do the pad abort test, but I have no idea if they're ready to do an in-flight abort test yet or not. I mean, that's an expensive test.
That it is, and Sierra Nevada actually has some additional tests, and I think they're going to complete out their CCI cap contracts as well. The reason you compete them is you don't get money until you complete that part of the contract.
Right.
So there's still money for them to be had by just completing out the rest of CCI cap.
Right.
So what do you guys think? And actually, I didn't even ask Space Mike, who's your favorite of the three? If they have to down select to one, and let's just say Sierra Nevada was still in it, just for fun. If they had to down select to one, who would you pick and why?
Well, my favorite is SpaceX, of course, just because I love them. But in reality, I think that they should pick Boeing. And the reason that I say that is because if they do have to down select to one provider, I think that SpaceX would still be able to do it on their own after CCT cap is done. However, Boeing might still need more funds and more help in order to be able to have the same capability. So that's why I think that Boeing should probably be picked, just because they need more, and SpaceX could still probably accomplish it with or without NASA's money.
Cool. My question to the community now, same exact thing I just asked Space Mike. All three are still on the table. This is a fantasy world we're living in right now, but
Obviously.
right, all three are still on the table. Who would you pick and why? Leave it in your comments. Leave it in the leave it on Facebook. You can leave it on YouTube, on Reddit, on Twitter, wherever you want to leave it, and we'll look at it and we'll bring it up in the next show that we do. And speaking of, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, comments from our last week's show. You guys loved commenting on that show.
Wow.
It was amazing. It was great. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. The heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
To tomorrow. Welcome back to tomorrow. You guys can't see it, but I have a preview monitor of all the different sources that are available to Dutta in the control room. And every time we go to the commercial break, I'm always sitting there like, doobie, 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 doobie. I dance like every single week, and it was great to see Space Mike do exactly the same thing during the commercial break. That song is one of the few things that has not really changed since we brought it in. It's been here for like 5 years. I have no intentions of changing it. I absolutely love it. So before we get into comments from our last week's show, I did want to give a huge shout out to all the patrons of tomorrow who have helped to make this episode happen. These are the Patreon Plus subscribers. This list continues to grow. These are the people who have contributed at least $3 to this specific episode, and you can get more information on that over at the URL at the bottom. But then, oh no, there's more. We've also got the patron subscribers. These are people who've contributed $1. This is about the cost of a cup of coffee to help keep a show about the cosmos and space on the air week after week. If you can give up one coffee per week and contribute that $1 to the show, you can help us a great deal. Thank you to every single person on that list. To the Patreon Plus subscribers, you also get a copy of After Dark immediately as soon as it's available. And to our patron subscribers, obviously your name in the show, and you still get access to that Google Hangout. More information on where to get, how to subscribe, and all the different reward levels that you get, and how you can help the show and our goals as well. We're getting very close to our next goal of having a swag store, is available at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's get started with some comments from our last week's show. Let's start this off with our first commenter, whom I believe is Ice. Yeah, I can see in the preview screen. He's not ready, so I'm on purpose stalling. Who is Ice Geeks? Here you go.
Ice Geeks from Patreon says, killer app equals quantum entanglement. Researchers have now used quantum entanglement to instantaneously transfer information over 88 miles. If this continues to pan out, this means instantaneous communication with satellites, the moon, and Mars.
Now, that comment continues. You can get more of that comment over at Patreon. Yes, I have brought up the concept of quantum entanglement before on the show as a communication method to Mars, specifically because when you go to Mars, the speed of light delay will be... It varies based on the distance to Mars.
Yeah.
I'm going to average it out to about 20 minutes or so. So it takes 20 minutes. Let's say you want to be on the internet. It takes 20 minutes for your packet to make it to Earth, and then 20 minutes for the request, and then 20 minutes for the next packet to make it back. If you thought 56K modems were slow.
No, dude, if you think the chat room and, like, you know, the lag between
The lag
us
now
saying
is
something
slow.
and you commenting on it is slow.
Now, with quantum entanglement, as I understand it, you basically take an atom and you split it in half. And those two halves, you can modify one half of it, and the other side will predictably react to how you modified that one half. And you can move them any distance apart that you want. And in real time, no matter how far apart they are, say 20 light minutes away, they're still going to react in real time. And that is what could potentially enable them. They've done this up to like 80 miles or so, or something like that.
88 miles, according to Ice Geeks.
Oh, did he say that?
Yes.
Oh, over 88 miles. I wasn't paying attention to the comment that we put in the show.
Good job.
So now I may have gotten a lot of that information wrong, so do not take my word for it. Certainly something to look up, and absolutely agree with Ice Geeks. That could be a killer app, but not just in space. That could change everything. Absolutely everything. I'm super excited for that. All right, moving on. Next.
Martian in a Human's Body, also, or from Reddit, I apologize, says, space-based solar has the issue of conversion. Photon to electron, then to microwave beams down, then back to electron. The benefit of space-based location is canceled out. Much more cost-effective to build on the ground. The killer app, I think, is related to cost for a person to travel to space. When it gets to the point where it compares to an all-inclusive resort trip, you'll find lots of people decide they do in fact want to go to space. A moon vacation location seems like the best, in my opinion, with a tourist trap by the Apollo landing sites.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of back to some of the comments from last week's show. I'm not sure I see space solar power making sense, but maybe it does. And I kind of added that first part in there because we have other people who say that it does make sense. But certainly being able to vacation in space, I think that would be... If you can get people into space to look back at the Earth, I think that changes humanity's consciousness somehow. I don't know how else to word that, but what an amazing change to humanity that could potentially be.
Just hopping right off of the space-based solar power being a thing, it was a very, very long comment, which is why we didn't include it, but the general gist was that they don't believe that space-based solar power will necessarily, because we were talking, well, once the cost of that comes down, then it will be the next big thing. And that particular commenter's point was, it doesn't necessarily have to come down in so much as we continue to use all the oil, the fossil fuels, and what have you, the cost of that is going to rise up.
Well, so they have to cross each other.
Exactly.
Somewhere.
So it's a relative idea of that it will cost less, if that makes any sense, which I thought was an interesting point.
So once again, I know the chat room is going to yell at me for this because this is a very uneducated question. So I'm just straight up, I do not understand how it works correctly.
Sure.
So as I understand it today, with space-based solar power transmitter from space, you send a beam, essentially a beam back down to Earth,
Right.
and you can't really necessarily stand under that beam, right? That's not something that you would want to have or living people under.
Right.
So it's kind of a harvesting area, and you have this kind of locked to a geos. But what if you could you build a beam that has enough power where it just basically is like satellite TV or satellite internet, but instead satellite power that just blankets a whole continent, for example. And then your cars, for example, all run, you get a Tesla Model M or whatever it is, and it has a thing on the roof that pulls down the power from this space-based system, and that's what charges your battery / powers your car with that, and that's what powers your home. You have a thing on the top of your house that receives this power. Day or night on Earth, it would still be day up in space. You know, at a geosync. I mean, would that be something that is actually possible? I assume the answer is no, because you wouldn't want to
I know,
spread the
I
beam
hear
that
another Stephen
wide.
King novel coming on, though. Like,
You wouldn't
and
want
now
to.
we all live under a dome because the dome takes the power, and then the power transmits to the people, and so you're not really underneath it because you're under this sort of thing.
But we're
remote
all
people
actually in the
possibly.
Matrix.
Yeah.
I don't actually think that would be possible. You'd be spreading the beam too wide, I think.
Right.
and then other stuff. So
Right.
I assume that's not a real thing, but someone way the heck smarter than me, who I'm sure is already saying that in the chat room, which I'm
Probably.
going to have to go back and review.
Yeah.
But someone way smarter than me. Tell me whether I'm right or wrong. Next up.
Okay, Destructor1701 from Reddit says, killer app usually refers to an application, be that software or used to put something to, that drives additional interest and business towards something. In this case, that something is space. To raise interest, space needs to directly provide something to people more easily or cheaper than they get it otherwise. That something may be an experience or a commodity. So, holidays to orbital hotels and the moon, or global broadband, or suborbital hypersonic point-to-point transit service, or rare earth minerals for manufacturing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and actually, I think
Yeah.
I think the ability to send humans to space, I think that's like I said, it's going to change human
huge.
consciousness, but it can't just be that. I don't
Right.
think. But even looking at, you mentioned global broadband.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what Google just purchased. Dada, do you remember who they just purchased? Skybox.
I do not.
All right.
So was it Skybox?
I thought it was
Skybox.
Skybox, yeah.
Well, they're not the broadband guys, are they?
No.
Google just bought a company that does
Google bought stuff, no surprise
Google
there.
bought stuff that does broadband with low altitude satellites, and I think that I've actually thought for a long time, because of the monopoly in the U.S., our broadband providers kind of suck. If we could get something on satellite that also doesn't suck, that's a technology problem, and force competition, because now it's kind of like DirecTV versus cable, force competition.
Right.
I think that would be a good thing, at least here in the U.S. All right, moving on.
Moon Miner from Reddit says, Ben, you made a mistake.
I usually do.
In fact, you put the SPS in geostationary orbit, and in that case, the baseload energy would be 24/7. The main problems right now are that we do not have light, medium, or heavy lift reusable space vehicles to make it economical to insert SPS into geostationary.
SPS is space-based solar power, or
Yes.
space power satellite, if I remember right.
Yes.
SPS. All right. So.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. I think I said that it would that it would only work half the time because
Right,
I
the
was
12
assuming that
hours,
you're
that kind
on
of
the
thing.
face of the Earth.
Right.
And that is you're actually, the whole point is that you're not.
No, you mean the sun doesn't go to sleep at night?
Isn't that how it works?
Yeah.
It just turns off at night.
It just, yeah.
So, yeah, you're right. And actually, Moon Miner's comment was a lot longer than what we just posted in the show. That was available on Reddit. Our Reddit community is exploding. It is amazing. Go over to reddit.com/r/TMRO, and you can actually find this last week's show and read all of these comments and comment on them yourself. Moon Miner's comment was absolutely fantastic, and is clearly much more knowledgeable about space-based solar power than I am. I openly admit I don't know a lot about it. I only know the kind of the general stuff, so I should probably research a lot more before I formulate a real opinion, or do what politicians do and research it to formulate the opinion that I want.
Just read the headlines.
Just read the headlines. Just read the headlines. Next up,
Tom Westcott from Reddit.
is it Tom or Thom?
Why would it be Thom?
I don't know.
We're going to go with Tom, and Tom can correct me later.
I like Thom.
A major problem in semiconductor
What
manufacturing.
the heck is that?
Stop it! A major problem in semiconductor manufacturing is phase changes in the silicon crystal ignite, which runs across the wafers like veins on a leaf and make any die they cross defective. This means that the larger the die pattern, the lower the yield, limiting the effective CPU, GPU die area in the same order of magnitude in the original 8080. I read a suggestion a long time ago that by slowly annihilating, the ignite's end-to-end in a microgravity, you would... Really? Are you going to make me read all of this?
I'm reading it. I'm reading it on the screen. No, y'all can read this here. All right, so microgravity. Let's see here. Would you like to drive out the impurities and phase changes, making a virtually perfect ingot? Somebody check my math, but I'm thinking of supply of perfect 800 millimeter wafers, we could make server or killer game box CPUs with hundreds of cores and gigabytes of cache or cache per core. That ought to catch the attention of a few techies. That is a pile of text. Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't even know why I allowed that on the show. I thought it was a really great comment, and I wasn't.
It was a great comment.
It was a great comment.
Way over my head.
Oh my god! So basically, what he's saying is that you can only make a CPU about yay big or so.
Right.
It's actually much smaller than that, but whatever. We're gonna say yay big because that's as big as I can make it in my hand. And there are impurities in the silicon. You can't get around that per se, so you have to figure out how to shrink everything else down inside that dot.
Right.
But what if you didn't have to do that anymore? What if you could get rid of the impurities? We could get rid of the impurities in space. Wouldn't that be awesome? Think of the computing power we could have if we could have a wafer this big, a single, jobber Jew. Yeah, so that would be very cool.
We agree. Agreed.
There we go.
All right. Now, is this Mike LePage from Reddit? Says, can we talk about zero-G sports? I've long thought zero-G table tennis would be an ideal spectator sport to start with. It has several advantages. It would not need too much room. It would be great alternative exercise for astronauts, and it would be something that could be implemented on the ISS or International Space Station right now.
Yes, I love the idea of zero-G sports. I think that's a great one. Yeah. Now that comment also.
How fast could that action actually go, though?
What
right? Because I have talked to a number of, say, hockey enthusiasts in particular that say they really much don't care about the game. They really want to see somebody else get beat up. And I say, well, why don't you watch boxing? But that's a different thing. How fast? The action wouldn't be crazy fast, right?
No, but
I throw this as hard as I can.
But in zero-G sports, if you're like chasing something, you're gonna slam into walls.
Sure, but it seems like your accuracy better be flipping dead on, or you're already blind.
Yeah, you're gonna get hurt. It's gonna be amazing. I think zero-G sports are gonna be awesome. I think that's gonna be awesome.
I like the concept existentially. I just don't think it would actually work.
All right,
but I guess I don't know.
Moving on.
All right, Maziar Molini says, why does Ben randomly touch his cup so much? Which is hilarious, because when I read this comment to Ben out loud, he said, there's no way somebody actually said that. And I said, honestly, and I kept my hands off the computer until he came over and read it himself. And that's why it is included, because the man cannot sit still.
I cannot sit still. Under the desk, if you watch this wide shot, you can actually watch me bounce my leg. I've been mentally.
He can't stand still. He can't even breathe
So
still.
the Surface actually, this which was not working correctly before the show, which is why it's on here, has a pen that goes with it. And the reason I play with my cup is because she steals my pen before the show.
I'd steal your cup too if you let me.
Phrasing, Care Bear. All right.
Whatever. The very last one, and this was one of my favorites of all time, Snowman TF2 says, HAL 9000 is the killer app for space.
That's a great way to end the show. All right, I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone who helped make this episode go. Space Mike, thank you so much for joining us. I see you're still on, so we're going to bring you back in After Dark if you don't mind. You can search YouTube for Epic Future Space to get more of his shows, which are just that energetic and informational. Way better than this show, I promise you. Go over to youtube.com and Epic Future Space on that. Thank you to all of the patrons of tomorrow who helped make this episode go. And we're going to go right into After Dark. If you're watching live, that's up next. If you're a Patreon Plus subscriber, you'll be able to watch that as soon as we upload it. Everyone else, that'll be available to you in about 4 weeks or so. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.